to motivations for the opportunity to get to serve your people, because I think that what I have is so important. It needs to be everywhere. And it's not about the money, it's about the mission. That's why this is free. It's not because it's valueless. It's because you're so valuable that we can't let money stand in the way. Let me tell you my story. I'm staring in the mirror, glaring at that woman staring back at me. I don't like her. I don't know her. And she looks mean. It's 3:33 in the morning and I can't sleep. And I keep staring at that woman until I recognize that those eyes are holding pain and sadness and fear. Yesterday jumbles across my awareness, and my teammates in my 911 center weren't even talking to me. I don't know why. I argued with my family at dinner. I don't know why. I'd even been ugly to the clerk at McDonald's when I picked up dinner. Poor little girl. I don't know why. I looked and looked. Who are you? What happened to you? I think of myself as kind and generous and funny, and I knew that I was anything but in those days. The day before was not unusual. These days I had conflict everywhere I turned. I was cranky, stingy, and surly. Something had to change. That was the moment when I turned toward finding out what was wrong with me and what to do about it. It took a lot of starts and stops, and it took a lot of failed experiments and years of hard-won education. But I cracked the code, and I'm here to start you on your journey to what I call an epic life. A life with energy, peacefulness, inspiration, and connection. I discovered that what was wrong with me is compassion fatigue. We're not going to go into the symptoms a whole lot today, but I have a handout that I'll send you after we're done. I'll also send you a link to a self-assessment. Compassion fatigue is also known as secondary traumatic stress. It seemed like it was going to be impossible to do anything about it. But I realized that I have defenders, and you have defenders to help you recover or even to guard against it. I think of compassion fatigue as a dragon, an invisible dragon that sits in the corner of every emergency communication center. This dragon is hungry. And what this particular dragon feeds on is authentic human emotion. And we all know that in every comm center, what gets suppressed is authentic human emotion. We can't afford to feel our feelings while we're at work. He's a flightless dragon, and I named him Immodius because I think it's a funny name. And when he gets hungry, he shoots out flames and he stings and burns people, and they get in pain. And the way they react is to blame somebody for that pain. Who are you going to blame when you're in the chair? You're going to blame your coworker. You're going to blame the person on the phone. You're going to blame the person on the radio. What you're not going to do is blame an external force that you have absolutely no control over. You want to give that pain a name to blame. And it's not the person next to you. It's not the person on the radio, and it's not the person on the phone that is the source of your pain. It is the human condition. The things that are represented by Immodius. What happens to us is that when we suppress those emotions constantly, we become unable to feel. We become unable to be in touch with the frustration, the disgust, the disappointment, the terror, the aggravation, the boredom, all the things that we cannot express get suppressed just so we can do our job. What happens is it deteriorates us. And so let me go to my slide deck, and we're going to talk about solutions. By the way, my name is, like Christy said, Reverend Dr. Edie DeVilbiss. I wasn't a Reverend Doctor when I was in the 911 chair. I got all those credentials after I left 911, largely in order to deal with this. So I've also served as an addictions counselor, a chaplain, and I have a doctorate in ministry, and my doctoral work was on addressing compassion fatigue through spiritual practices. So my sister, who is even older than me, is my artist, and she visualized Immodius for us. I'm hoping that you can see the slide deck. He shoots sparks of pain. Compassion fatigue, PTSD, burnout, secondary traumatic stress. These are your greatest health hazards in the 911 center. There's a lot about 911 that can make you sick. But at the root of it all is compassion fatigue. One of the problems with compassion fatigue is that it breaks down our physical well-being. So any medical problem you have is probably related back to the stress you're under. Now, I've developed the Epic Life process, and through this process, I've accomplished some fairly remarkable things. I have an autoimmune condition that I got under control because of this work with my defenders. I also completed my doctoral work in the midst of COVID, and I've dropped 85 pounds. So I know what I'm talking about, and I've helped other people with their life challenges too. Compassion fatigue destroys what's your best and magnifies your worst. Whatever's really good about you, it's going to destroy it. You think you're kind, it'll take that away. You think you're compassionate, it'll take that away. You have a tendency towards snarky, it'll make it even worse. You have a tendency toward disrespect, it'll make it worse. You have a tendency toward a temper, it'll make it worse. Compassion fatigue absolutely destroys lives, and it destroys relationships. But you have defenders. You already have the resources that you need. I'm not saying you don't need counseling. Counseling is very valuable, and I've had plenty of it. But counseling wasn't all I need. This is to help you regain the fullness of your health through the counseling in addition to the counseling. So you have defenders. Do you know what they are? Because Immodius' sparks and smoke confuse and weaken our defenders. So what we need to do is become intentional about strengthening our natural resources. So the Epic Life process is this. You get to know your defenders. One of the primary things I teach is that 5 minutes a day, sitting in silence, will help you gain the margin that you need to have the energy to do the work that keeps you strong. I don't care how much overtime you have, how many children you have, how much extra duty you have. You can find 5 minutes a day for your most valuable asset, which is your health. Um, 5 minutes a day, you're worth it. So 5 minutes a day to sit in silence and just listen to yourself breathe. That's the core of what I want you to do. Your first step in the Epic Life process is to empower your defenders. Let's find out who the defenders are first. Echo, the one in purple, is your values, your echo. So we find out who we are not just by who we think we are. Remember, I thought I was generous and kind and funny, and I was anything but. So your echo is not just who you think you are, it's who you're actually being. And it's echo because it's how people react to you. If you think you're funny and people's feelings get hurt, that's not funny. If you think you're being kind and your kid ends up in tears, that's not kind. If you think you're generous and you're not being generous, you know that something's wrong. And so we've got to pay attention to not only who we want to be, but who we are actually being. The next offender is Mojo, and Mojo is asking you to pay attention to your body. And remember, there's only 4 really basic things that you need to do to take care of your physical body. One is to move. You got to keep in motion, which, 911 definitely interferes with that. Another is you've got to eat right. Shift work makes it really difficult to eat right. And the fact that the only thing open in a lot of these towns in the middle of the night is a 7-Eleven, it's hard to eat right. And so that's a problem. So you got to move, you got to eat right. What else do you need? You need to sleep. You need to get plenty of quality rest. And the fourth one we forget about, especially in 911, because it's dangerous to hydrate well, because you're going to have to get up and go to the restroom. And sometimes that's just not possible. And it's really uncomfortable. And you can eventually get bladder infections and kidney stones. It's a lose-lose situation. So everything in 911 goes against your mojo, but it's really, really important. The next 2 are more internal. Pointer represents your attitude. We call him Pointer because he's going to point out who I think is responsible for what's going on in my life. What happens, one of the symptoms of compassion fatigue is a sense of persecution. And that says that it's somebody's out to get me. Well, if somebody's out to get you, then it's not your fault, right? And so you tend to blame other people when you're in the throes of compassion fatigue. We've all worked with somebody who does this, that doesn't take any responsibility for what they do. And we find it reprehensible. And I found that when I was at my worst in compassion fatigue, that was me. It was not my fault. But yes, it was. Sparky represents the quality or the temperature of your relationships. We all want our relationships to be warm. No matter how close or how far away, we want to have warm interactions with other people. We don't want to be ice cold, and we don't want to be hot tempered or flaming hot. We want to be warm. At least many people do, maybe not you. Our 5th defender is Buddy. And Buddy is our connection to the power of love. Now, I'm a United Methodist pastor. I believe in God. But you might not believe that. But I hope that you believe in love. Love is the power that holds together the universe. Love is the power that keeps us alive. Love is the very fabric of our being. And when I was at my worst in compassion fatigue, I could not feel love. I could not receive love. I could not manufacture love. I was not even sure I loved my kids. I just didn't have it. I was numb. And let me tell you, of all the symptoms of compassion fatigue that I experienced, that was the worst. That sense of not being able to be loved, of not feeling loved, and not being able to love had me so disconnected from myself and from my community that it would have been easy to slip into suicidal ideation. And that's where compassion fatigue becomes a life-threatening illness. This stuff is serious. But it doesn't have to be boring, and it doesn't have to be drudgery. It can be fun. So we have these defenders. What we do with our defenders is we pay attention to who they are. We practice, we persist, we persevere. That's the P in EPIC. So we're going to pay attention to our defenders every day. We're going to check in with them every day. Hey, Mojo, how am I doing today? Hey, Echo, how am I doing today? Hey, Pointer, how am I doing today? And so on. And we're going to spend that 5 minutes with Buddy, listening to our heart of love and breathing in love and touching base with love. And when we fall off and we quit doing it because something happened, we got called in for mandatory overtime, or our kid got sick, or 50,000 things can happen to throw us off when we start something new. We begin again. We always begin again without shame, without self-remorse, without self-recrimination. We begin again because it's our lives, because we are worth it, because you are worth it. What happens when we start taking care of ourselves with this 5 minutes a day of silence and just a few seconds of checking in with our defenders is our identity becomes yes, I can talk. Our identity begins to shift. We become someone who cares well for themselves instead of someone who is always giving to others and not caring well for themselves. It is definitely a shift to what we typically go into the work doing. James Clear wrote Atomic Habits, which is a really good book if you want to change habits. And he says that every action you take is a vote for the person you want to become. It's a vote for your future self or against your future self. You want to be healthy? Vote today to be healthy. And you do that with every bite that you take, every piece of motion that you make, every drink of water, and the rest that you enjoy. The C in EPIC is to courageously connect. One of the things that happens in 911 is we lose touch with people who are not in emergency communications and in the emergency services world. People just don't understand who we are. They just don't understand what we do, and it is hard to stay connected. Shift work interferes with relationships. I had a hard time keeping relationships with my own siblings because so many canceled plans. So many times I disappointed people. I really tried hard to stay connected to my family. One 4th of July, we invited people over for a barbecue, and I fell asleep on the couch because I had worked overnights the night before. I wasn't even present for my own party because I had stayed up all morning making my famous potato salad. Don't have famous potato salad, okay? Don't have something like that that takes a lot of time to make that people love and expect from you. Just, buy a Jell-O salad or something. because connection was what I wanted, and what I got was exhaustion. So courageously connect. Be intentional about connection. Be intentional about calling that friend you haven't seen in a few months, the one you canceled on and you're embarrassed because you canceled on them, or the one who just drives you nuts talking about drivel when you have saved lives in the last few hours. Let them talk about drivel. Drivel matters. So at the end of the day, when you check in with your defenders, I want you to take your defenders into a team huddle, ask them how you're doing, and let them talk to you. Let them guide you into what you need to do next, and give yourself grace. Tons and tons and tons of grace. You are not perfect. You will not be perfect. Sarcasm is the second language of 911 dispatchers. And unfortunately, it interferes with communication with people who don't get sarcasm. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just begin again. Cutting yourself some slack and giving yourself the margin through that 5 minutes a day to be able to do something different, because you are worth your effort. When you get healthy, you give space to allow others to become healthy people. Now, I know I've thrown a lot at you, but that's the Epic Life process in a nutshell, a very small nutshell. So let me ask, do you have any questions? What questions do you have? Might be the better question to ask.
I think one thing that would be helpful is to know this is a really condensed version of your training, right?
Yes, very convincing.
This is like an opening and kind of explaining that stuff. Can you talk a little bit more about what your full training for this looks like?
So when we get into the full training, we will dive deeper into ECHO. We have a self-assessment that we do to find out where we are. Who is it we want to be? How do you look at your values? And what is most important to you? Our values can clash with each other. So say you value hard work and you value your family. Those two can clash with each other because your hard work can interfere with your family time. You know, your 8-year-old son has a baseball game and work keeps you. That's a clash. When my daughter was in kindergarten, in first grade, I was on the overnight shift. And so I wasn't present for her for the day shift kind of things that happen for kindergartners or for first graders. And so that was a clash for me. And so I had to sort out those values. And so there are different values that can clash with each other, and every person is different. And so we spend some time with that. Mojo, we take a deep dive into what we're eating, how we're moving, and how we're drinking. People will say, oh, I need to drink more water, so they get a 72-ounce container of water. I don't believe in that. I think that what you need to do is start drinking one more 8-ounce glass of water a day. Keep it small. Keep it very small. Start with one. Start small, start with one, and start now. And so there are different ways. Sleep is one that we spend some time on because sleep is so complex. Shift work goes against our natural body rhythms, and so we have to pay attention to that. There are functional things that we can do to help us sleep. And So we take a good long look at those things. Pointer, we take a look, we assess what's going on and who we're blaming. And that's a real deep dive into our own inner thinking. And sometimes it's really a challenge to recognize when we blame somebody else. Sparky, we take a look at our interpersonal relationships one by one. So who is Sparky? Sparky's the one who monitors the temperature of our relationships. And so how are you getting along with people in your life? And I'm not just talking about your family and your coworkers. I'm talking about how are you getting along with other drivers on the road? How are you getting along with yourself? How are you getting along with your family members that don't live close by? How are you getting along with the clerk at McDonald's? I was expressing a lot of anger towards strangers when I was the sickest. So all of these things we just take a really deep dive look at. And Buddy is where we examine what we believe about the existential questions. Are we alone in the universe? What's it all about? These are deep questions. What's the nature of humanity? Do I even like humans? And what does that say about me? If I think all humans are awful, how do I feel about me? If I think all humans are unworthy, how do I feel about me? How do I feel about the person next to me? And what does this mean about all of this? I mean, there's some deep questions, and I have the privilege and the honor of being able to take you through those deep questions because of my training as a chaplain. And we just practice together. We practice that huddle. And James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, and also I've been sick the last few days. I keep forgetting things. Also another really good book about habits that I will remember. Both recommend that you don't try to change habits alone. So changing habits is pretty simple, but it's not easy. So you need to decide what you want to change, and then you look for the smallest, easiest thing to do that will change it. That's why I recommend 5 minutes a day of meditation. Just 5 minutes a day. Because if you schedule it for more, you won't do it. It's too much. So you've got to keep it small. You've got to keep it, I'm sorry, keep it small. You've got to enjoy it. So you've got to find pleasure in it. So one of the ways to do that is to just sit back and enjoy it. So when you finish your 5 minutes a day of meditation, you say, wow, I did it. But the way that that works with another person is you send them a notification that you did it. So you send them a check mark or an emoji, a smiley face. One of the things that I've done with one of my accountability partners is when we did our thing, we sent an emoji. And when we didn't do our thing, we sent it in emojis, because keeping track every day was really powerful. And that's the fourth of the 4 keys to changing habits, is to track it daily. So you gotta keep it. You gotta decide what you want. You gotta keep it small and doable. You've got to track it daily, and you've got to enjoy it. And so those four things together will help you with as establishing a habit, but keeping track with other people helps you even more. Have I jumbled it up good enough to really confuse people?
Edie, sometimes we get feedback like, we just have time for dispatch skills training and job training. And some are like, oh, I don't want to go because this is woo woo and it's emotional and it talks about, I have to get emotional about things. How do you overcome that? And why is it important for
For 911?
well, yeah, why is this training important for 911 and for individuals?
Well, compassion fatigue is life threatening. And that's the bottom line. And if you're dead, you can't do your work. Unfortunately, the road to death is very long and very ugly. This is important because when you lose touch with your emotional well-being, you lose touch with your physical well-being. Our emotions are feelings expressed through the bodies. I don't know how much you know about neurophysiology or mental health, but there's a term called triggering. And so when something happens, we can react so fast that we don't know what happened. We don't know why we happened so quickly. I've had that happen to me more than once. One of the incidents I remember, my son was about 16 years old. And I know he was about that old because he had shot up 5 inches taller than me in about a year, between 15 and 16. It was very startling for both of us. And he said something to me that upset me so fast and so hard that I slapped him so quick that it scared me and it scared him. And neither of us can actually remember what he said. I think he called me a name. I don't hit my kids. So that's being triggered. Now, what a trigger is when something happens that your physiology responds so quickly that you don't have the margin to do something different. That is dangerous in 911. You need to be able to have that moment to take a quick breath and let your mind think, because trigger reactions are dangerous because they can make you do the wrong thing. So there's that. There's the job itself, but there's your own well-being. Ask yourself, which is more important to you, 911 or your health? Because that's the choice that you're making when you choose not to address your mental health, when you choose not to accept the fact that you are in a position that puts you at high risk for mental health problems. It's not that you're broken. It's not that you're crazy. It's that your physiology has internalized trauma. And you need to find a way to externalize it. It's very simple. It's not easy. Bessel van der Kolk talks about how people feel so broken that they feel irreparable. And my experiences was that I really felt like I was irreparable. I really felt like I was worthless because I could not love. And so the choice is between 911 and your health. If you were working in construction and your construction company asks you to wear protective equipment, say you're building bridges, and they're asking you to connect to a carbiner that connects you to a lanyard that holds you to the bridge, just in case you fall. Are you going to do it? Because if you don't, you're at risk of falling. And if you fall, you could die. And that's why they have that rule. I think that in a lot of ways, we are negligent in the 911 center because we don't require attention to mental health. Because if OSHA was more aware of the physiological dangers of compassion fatigue, PTSD, burnout, secondary traumatic stress, there would be regulations to make us do something about it. I don't know how well you care for yourself. I know I didn't. And nobody told me that I needed to. Nobody told me that it was really important to process the things that I was not feeling because I didn't have time. You can't feel the stuff because the phone's still ringing. We had a homicide suicide in a parking lot one time. The press called and said, "Hey, anything going on?" I said, "Nothing interesting." And when they made a complaint to my supervisor and she called me on the carpet, I said, it was not interesting. There was too much going on to talk to anybody. It wasn't interesting to me. I did not care that these people had killed themselves, or I don't even remember who killed who, because I was that jaded. And I wasn't in that big an agency, and we didn't have that much violent crime. But I was that jaded. How jaded are you? And I feel like I'm preaching to the choir because you're here. Because you love yourself enough to want to pay attention to your own well-being. You are worth it. You're worth the time that we spend on this. So, any questions? What questions do you have?
Our audience is quiet, and I didn't come up with any other questions, but this is your time to ask Edie some of those questions. Maybe you want more about the characters, or in general, what you should be taking back to your agencies and yourself. So feel free to ask a question in chat or out loud.
Okay.
Okay. Well, there are no other questions, but I do want to thank you guys for attending this first session that Edie is doing. As some of you may or may not know, Edie does have a couple of other classes in our training portal that are free for you guys to watch and listen to. But Edie also is doing some amazing work coming up, and I want her to share what she's doing, because I think this is very important work in the industry, and feel free to ask her questions. So Edie, let us know what you're doing with the 911 initiative.
Okay, so I am working with Brandy Powell on the 911 Chaplain Initiative. I have taken on the task of training up chaplains in 911 for 911. I don't know how many of your agencies have chaplains. A chaplain is a spiritual leader who is called to serve people outside of their spiritual tradition. So a chaplain isn't there to proselytize, to turn you to whatever they are. Like if it's a Hindu chaplain, they're not going to try to teach you to worship Krishna. If they're a Christian chaplain. They're not going to try to turn you to Christianity. And same with all chaplains. That's not our role. Our role is to give you a place that's safe to address the spiritual questions that come up in your workplace. There's things that happen that bring up big questions. I know for me, the biggest question was, what is it with people? Why is it that these children are born into families that do all they can to hurt them? And I don't know the answer to that, but I am trained to be able to sit with you in that answer. And so I'm training a group to be chaplain, 911 chaplains now. And we're working on having people who are interested in learning more about chaplaincy to get on an email list and hear more about it. And if you're interested in becoming a chaplain or having a chaplain or having guidance about a chaplain or having me come and speak about chaplaincy, then we can keep in touch. I have a couple of workshops other than the answering the call within is the one I'm doing for the chaplaincy program. I have a longer workshop on your epic life awaits. And I also do a workshop on we don't talk about grief in the Emergency Communication Center. And we don't. And grief is part of our story. I'm very concerned with the number of 911 and other first responder suicides that I hear about. It's dangerous work that we do, and we don't think it's dangerous. And we don't recognize how much risk we are taking when we're not paying attention to the dangers. So I do workshops, I do keynote speeches, and I'm training chaplains. And so I'm excited about the work that I get to do to serve 911. I'm excited about having you here, even though I can't see your face. I am so grateful for the work that you do, because I know the passion, the heart, and the magnificent levels of snark that it takes to do this work. It's not just the work that you do that matters, it's who you are. So thank you. Thank you so much, Christy, and thank you.